Welcome you all again to Vinchemy's YouTube channel. So I just noticed that there are only two chemistry chapters in the whole science textbook of class 7. So today I thought I'll teach one chapter from class 6 chemistry. So this video is for class 6 students. So basically many people don't make much videos in YouTube for middle class, that is 6, 7, 8. You can't find much videos for them. So that's why I've decided to make a video for these people. So today's video is going to be for class 6 students and the chapter is separation of substances. Okay. So I'll just share my screen then. So you would have seen many cases in which you need to separate some substances for some reason. Like if you have, went to the kitchen and you've seen your mom making tea. So basically what she'll do, right? Basically, she'll have one strainers, right? She'll have one strainer and she'll separate the tea leaves from the rest of the solution, right? Just to separate both of them because she just needs a tea extract. So she uses a strainer and separates this. Or if you're eating, okay, if you have seen, this pongal or something, okay, pongal, okay, some people, pick that pepper. Some children don't like that pepper, so they just pick that pepper. Or even food items you have seen of separating some tomato. It's not good actually, but some people, separate this chili, right? When they put chilies in the food items, they just take the chili with hand. So they separate it using hand. So they separate it using hand. So I'm giving you two examples. In one of the examples, we use something known as a sieve, okay? For tea, for making tea, we use a sieve to separate the extract. But for things like, pongal, separating the peppers or separate chili from some food items, we just use our own hand, right? We just use our own hand to separate them. So many examples of that where we need to separate. If you have seen, sometimes there will be some stones in the rice. Then we need to pick out the stones or something. Many places we need to separate some undecided impurities, right? Even you're going for shopping, okay, and you just have one bag. So you just put some fruits and come back, and it's all mixed, like orange is mixed with your pineapple, guava, everything, and you just separate it again using hand. So there are many methods of separating these. So this chapter is about that. This chapter is about why we need to separate them and how we can separate, basically. So the first question which arises in your mind is why? Why should I separate substance? What's the need to separate the substances? The reason very simple. Why should I separate tea leaves from this? Because I need to just separate them and use it. Why should I separate stones from rice? Because stones are undesirable. I can't eat stones. They are undesired impurities. So I'm just separating the impurities. Similarly, why should I just take some, what they say? They churn the milk, right? When they're making butter, they say they churn the milk. Again, to separate the impurity, separate two substances, okay? Because either one of the substances can be of use or both substances can be of use. So just to separate them and use it separately, or maybe one is impurity, one is base, we can just discard them. So that's the reason of why we need to separate them, okay? Now, how we can separate? So that's the most important part of this chapter. So let's just go into the methods of separation, right? Methods of separation. So let's see basically different methods in which we can separate, various. So the first very common method of separating things is, okay, the first very common method of separating things is your hand picking method. Okay, your hand picking method. It's hand picking. So basically this method of hand picking I can use, for things like, let's say stones from rice. If I want to separate stones from rice, I can basically do hand picking, right? Or let's say from guavas from some fruit, then again I do hand picking. So these hand picking is preferred whenever, the substances are big, whenever the substances are of comparable size, let's say little bigger size. Okay, then I can go for hand picking. And if it's present in small quantities, then I can go for hand picking. But if it's let's say something like I have a jar and I'm mixing salt and sand, then definitely for this case I can't even think of hand picking because salt and sand grains are very, very small. I can't just pick it by hand. So we go for different methods. Okay, so hand picking is used whenever the things are bigger. Okay, like stones I can pick with hand because it's of comparable size compared to rice, it's a little bigger. So then I can go for hand picking. So this thing you need to understand very clearly. Okay. Yeah, so the next method which I'm going to do is called threshing. Okay, so the next method is called threshing. So if you have all heard of separate, how do we get rice? We eat rice, right? So how do we get that rice? How do we get the rice grain? So farmers grow rice plant, right? So they grow rice plant. So those plants or rice, wheat, everything, it will be present. It will have something called as husk. It's some protective covering outside the rice grain. So it has a husk. Okay, and also there are strings, right? But what we get is not with the stem. We just get the grain. So they're separating what is it, the stem as well as the husk. So this threshing, okay, is to separate the rice grains with the husk from the let's say stem. So they take huge heaps of this stem, okay, and they take one big stone, okay, and what they do is they just beat, okay, they just beat the rice strands on the let's say a rock. Okay, then what happens is all this yeah, the grains will get cut and yeah, it will get separated. Okay, so they just beat it on a rock or a stone. So this is threshing. The next method is called winnowing. Okay, so what is the winnowing? So rice, now the rice grains are separated from the stem. So there is rice grains like this. Okay, so these are separated and just have the rice grains. Now they will have a protective brown covering called a husk outside them. Okay, I can't just pluck them with this because it's so rice grains are so much and so small, it's very difficult to pluck. So basically, what we do is I stand on a rock, okay, and I'll have a thing called a winnow. Okay, it's like a flat pad. Okay, it's like a flat pad. It's just called a winnow. Okay, so I put the rice grains in that and I just winnow it. Winnowing is just shaking it. So I just winnow it like this. Okay, I just winnow it. So what happens is the rice grains. Okay, the husk is very very light. The rice grains are harder. Okay, 1 minute. Yeah, so when I winnow it, okay, the rice grains get separated from the husk. Okay, the husk is very, very light. So when wind passes like this, okay, with the wind, the husk gets fallen aside somewhere here, okay, let's say the husk gets fallen here, and the rice grains are heavier than the husk, so that rice grains get settled down in a big heap, so they both get separated, okay. So this is the procedure of winnowing, okay. So next method is called sieving, okay. Next method is called sieving. So let's now see about sieving. The next method is sieving. Okay, the fourth method is called sieving. Okay, so now I'm taking a wheat or rice. Okay, let's say wheat, and I'm doing threshing. Okay, so I'm just removing it, and then I'm doing winnowing. So I've removed it from the husk. But even after these processes, some husk may be sticking onto the wheat grains, isn't it? So then I use sieving. So sieving is just like your mother uses for making tea. It's just a sieve, okay, like this. It's just a sieve wired mesh, okay. So to this, after making the wheat, I can make flour, okay. I can grind it and make a flour, and then I have to pour the flour in this, okay. So when I pour this, you would have seen this making. If you have made cake and all, also, I think you would have done this. So then the fine flour particles get collected in this container, and some stones or something present wheat will get collected in the sieve. Okay. Similar sieve will also be used in the construction sites of sieve. They'll have a big sieve there. Okay. And there they'll put those sand and all to get the fine sand, right? They'll have a big sieve and in that they'll put the sand to get fine sand. Okay. So that's about sieving. So now you should remember which process for which. Okay. You should know the difference between all the process. Hand picking is basically when it takes 2 or 3 seconds. Hand picking. Threshing is basically, to separate the rice grains with the husk from the stem. Winnowing is to separate the husk from the grains. And sieving, is to sieve it like a flour or sand to get the fine particles. Okay, now the next, we are going to go to a very important processes that is sedimentation, decantation, and filtration. So we need to know the differences between sedimentation, decantation, and filtration. Okay. right? Okay. Now sedimentation decontamination filter. For this, I'll use the same example of rice. Okay. So now I'm taking rice, so let's say wheat. Okay. So now I have wheat flour. Now, okay, I can remove the husk from the grains using winnowing. I can remove from stem using threshing. I can remove some small stones, some small husks, even remaining after winnowing by sieving. But what if there's some dust, okay, some dust particles or some soil particles, because it grows in the soil. So some soil or dust particles are present in the, let's say, grains. How do we separate them? Okay, so for that, I can use this sedimentation decantation. So basically, I take a beaker, okay, and I mix those rice grains with water. Okay, so I have rice grains. Okay, so I'm mixing this with water. Okay, so now I have water. Let's say I'm mixing it with water. Okay. Okay, so I'm mixing it with water, and after you have to leave it for some time. You can even use this as separate some, I'll tell you. Okay, so leave it for some time. So what happens is after some time, okay, the rice grains, okay, the rice grains will be here. Okay, only, and this is water. All the dust, okay, which is present here. Okay, those dust will rise to the top, and because dust is lighter, right? It flows on water. So it goes to the top. After this, what we do is we tilt the vessel, right? We tilt the vessel and pour it to another vessel. Okay, we tilt the vessel and pour it to another vessel. So what happens when I tilt? Okay, basically the water will become slanted. Okay, and the rice grains will be in the bottom, right? The dust will be here. Okay, so when I pour this water, all the dust will go and get collected here. So I can just separate the dust from the uh what to say, rice grains. Okay, so this process letting it stand is called sedimentation. Okay, sedimentation. And the thing which sits at the bottom is called sediment. Sediment. Okay. And yeah, when I just tilt it and pour it on the container, this process is called decantation. So basically, they are like what to say, they both go hand in hand. Okay. So after sedimentation is decantation. Now, what is filtration then? Filtration is very simple. Let's say tea leaves. Okay, let it stand. After decanting, also there'll be some tea leaves present. For that, I'll use some sieve. Okay, or okay, I'll use a sieve, or in better terms, I can say a funnel. Okay, a filter paper. Okay, and when I pour this mixture, okay, there will be a vessel here. So I'll have clear liquid here. Okay, I'll have clear liquid here, and something will get collected here in the filter paper, right? So that thing which gets collected in the sieve or filter paper, the sieve also, whatever gets collected, tea leaves, okay, that is called residue, and this clear liquid is called filtrate. Okay, so this process is called filtration. You can either use a funnel, filter paper, or a sieve. So, so this process you can even use it for making tea leaves or even the water. Okay, sometimes you've seen the water we drink or the water we bathe. Okay, if you leave it for some time, you see some stones or sand particles are settling in the bottom. That also can separate it by sedimentation, decantation. Okay, right. So I hope this method is also clear for you. Okay, so now let's move on to the next method. And yeah, this method can also be used to separate, two liquids which do not mix. Like I can use this to separate oil and water also. Okay. And yeah, this method can also be used to make paneer. Okay, to make paneer. And when you make juice, okay, the juice will have some seeds in it, right? So to separate them, you can use filtration. Okay. So the next method which is there for us is evaporation. Okay. This evaporation is generally used to separate salt from salt water or seawater. Okay, salt from seawater. So if you want, you can even try in your home. Just take some water in a beaker, okay, and put some 2 teaspoons of salt in it, and then slowly heat it. The water will get evaporated, and the salt will be left behind. Okay, but how they generally do in their salt making mines is, okay, they take one shallow pits. They make shallow pits in the soil, okay, and seawater will get flowing through this. So it slowly gets heated up by the sun, and then yeah, salt will get left behind. So they take that salt and then they do crystallization for the purification, etc., to get a pure salt. Okay, so for that we use evaporation. Okay. Now we have seen so many methods of separation, right? Now for some processes to separate some substances, we need to use more than one processes. Okay, so let's see about them. Okay, now let's see that example. So in the earlier stage, I told you about how about separation of salt and sand, right? And we said we can't separate it using hand picking, etc. Right? So how do we exactly separate? Now I'll discuss all the methods of separation. So how do we exactly separate? Think about it. Okay. So how do we do this? I can take a beaker. Okay. So I have a mixture of salt and sand. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a beaker with water. Okay. But the rule here is whatever new substance I'm using, okay, at the end of the process, I should get back the same substance. Like I'm using water, at the end also there should be water after separating salt and sand. Okay, so that's the rule here. So let's say I'm putting the mixture of salt and sand in this. So there's salt and there's some sand also in this. Okay, so I'm just mixing it with water. Okay, the first step I'm doing is mixing it with water and then allowing it to stay for some time. So I'm just doing sedimentation and decantation. I'm letting it allow to stay some time. Okay, then what will happen is the salt will get mixed with the water because salt is dissolvable in water, right? The salt gets dissolved in the water. Okay, and the sand it sinks in water, so it stays in the bottom. Now I can just tilt this. I can do decantation. So I can just tilt and transfer this, water to another container. Okay, sorry. So to another container. So this container will just have the sand. Okay, so this container will not have the water. It will just have your sand because the water is transferred to another container. So now I've separated sand successfully. But now here I have salt water, but I just need salt. I just need water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a beaker and yeah, the same beaker, let's say salt water beaker. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this. Basically evaporation and condensation. And here I'm going to keep a plate and put some ice cubes in this. Okay. So what happens is this evaporates. Okay. And here water droplets gets formed. Okay. That's basically called condensation, right? Because change of water to gas to liquid. So that's called condensation. And here, okay, in this beaker, only salt will get, so only salt will be formed. As I told you now, from salt from water, the method you have to use is evaporation. There I'm using evaporation, but I need water also. So I'm using condensation also. So basically, how did you know that you need to mix it with water? Because salt and sand, I can't think of any other method, right? So I go with this method. Okay, I mix it with water. So that's because I know salt gets dissolved in water easily and sand gets settled at the bottom. So that's the procedure I have to do. Okay, also one more method for you. Okay, that's called magnetic separation. Okay, magnetic separation. So this method is generally used on substances that are magnetic. Okay, let's say I have a beaker with some sand, and in that, let's say some iron is mixed with it. Okay, some iron pieces are mixed with it. Then I can just take one, magnet. Okay, close it so that all the iron will get attracted, and I can separate the sand from this iron filings. Okay. Okay. The last of your textbook, there's one mention of something called as saturated solution. So basically, I'm taking a mixture. I'm taking beaker or some cup with water. Okay. And I'm keep on adding salts in it. Okay. I'm keep on adding salt in it. Okay. At one point of time, no more salt will dissolve in the water. You'll see some salt, after adding some salt, the salt will get set at the bottom. That stage is called saturated stage. Okay. When you can't add any more salt, meaning no more salt will be able to dissolve. Okay. In that particular solution, that's called saturated. And even after it's getting such, if you add more and more and more and more salt, that will be set. That will be called as super saturated solution. So that's the last bit of this chapter. I hope it's clear for you. Now let's do the book back exercises as usual, right? I hope you can see the screen. So the first question, why do we need to separate different components of a mixture? Give two examples. Okay, for this, there's a big table given in your book. Okay, there's a big table given. I'll just go to that page. Yeah. So why do we need to separate the substances? You can just give any two examples. Okay, there are three examples. You can give any two examples. I already told you the reasons, but yeah, you can give any two substances. The main reason is we need to separate harmful or non-useful substances with maybe mix with the useful components. That's the reason. Okay, some harmful or some waste we need to separate. Okay, you can give any two examples on the table. Okay, that's for the first part. What is winnowing, where it is used? Okay, all this is given in your textbook. Okay, I already explained what is winnowing and where it is used. It's used to remove the what is it, husk from the rice grains. So everything is given clearly in your textbook. So winnowing. So we go through this. You can just see. 1 minute. What is winnowing? Okay. Even sand sawdust you can winnow. Okay, you can just say winnowing is a method of separation used to separate heavier and lighter components of mixture by wind or by blowing air. That would be the definition. Okay. The method of separating heavier and lighter components of a mixture by wind or blowing air is called winnowing. Where it's used, you can give an example like to separate sand and sawdust or separate husk from rice grains, etc. Okay. So that's about it. And next is how do you separate husk or dust particles from okay. Husk or dirt particles in given sample of pulses before cooking. You should be very, very careful. It's just not husk, it's dirt. So for dirt, you can't use winnowing. So of pulses, so the best would be to do sieving, okay? Because they're clean dirt. It's just husk, okay, can do for winnowing. But since dirt is mentioned, I prefer sieving. What sieving where is used, again, will be given in your textbook. I'll just go if you want. Okay, so 1 minute. What is sieving? I'm sorry for the disturbance, okay? What is CP? So sieving again, you need to start like the method of separation, which allows the fine particles to pass through the hose of the sieve and while the bigger particles remain in the sieve. Whereas used in a flour mill, okay? You can just say some examples, okay? Give me a minute. Uh, Next, if you see here, how will you separate sand and water from their mixture? Okay, so sand and water from its mixture. Okay, so how will you separate sand and water from their mixture? So I have water here, and in that I have sand. So what can I do? I've already told in the example of salt, sand, and water itself, right? Sand basically sinks in water. So if you leave it for some time, it'll sink. Then you just need to pour. So you can go for sedimentation, decantation. Is it possible to separate sugar mixed with wheat flour? If yes, how will you do it? Sugar with wheat flour. Yeah, you can actually you can sieve. Okay, when you're sieving, sugar crystals are bigger, right? So they get stuck on the sieve. Wheat flour passes through it. Use a sieving method. Okay. How would you, so you need to think. You can't go for hand picking, yeah, right? Because sugar and all, I can't pick it with hand. I can't go for anything else. I can't go for threshing, winnowing and all. So best would be sedimentation, decantation, not needed here. Okay. It will be difficult to mix wheat with water. How do you obtain clear water from sample of muddy water? Muddy water means water mixed with some soil. If you leave it for some time, just impurities get settled. So you can do sedimentation, decantation, and filtration. The method of separating seeds of paddy from its stalks, not from its husk, from stalks is called threshing. When milk is cooled after boiling, it is poured on a piece of cloth. The cream is left behind on it. This process of separating, this is how they make paneer. So this process of separating cream from milk is an example of, see, we are cooling and we are pouring out a piece of cloth and the cream is left behind it. So this cloth acts like a sieve. So this is an example of a sieving. Okay. I told you actually. Salt is often received by process of evaporation. By evaporation. Impurities settled at the bottom and muddy water was kept overnight in a bucket. The clay water is then poured off from the top. This process of separation is example is called sedimentation and decantation. Because you're pouring now, that process called decantation. Okay, true or false, a mixture of milk and water can be separated by filtration. Milk and water. If you've seen your mother make milk, boil milk, okay, she'll put some water in it. And if you filter the milk, no, the water cannot be separated. Both are liquids. They can't even be separated generally. This is false. Okay, because of filtrate, one should, get stuck in the sieve. Both as liquids, it won't get stuck. A mixture of powdered salt and sugar. Powdered salt and sugar can be separated process of winnowing. Winnowing, no, it won't. Okay, not by winnowing. Okay. So separation of sugar from tea can be done with filtration. Sugar and tea, yeah, that you can filtrate because sugar crystals, get stuck in the filtrate, get stuck in the filter paper. So this is true. Grain and husk can be not by decantation. Husk means winnowing. So false. Lemonade is prepared by mixing lemon juice and sugar in water. You wish to add ice to cool it. Should you add ice to the lemonade before or after dissolving sugar? In which case will it be possible to dissolve more sugar? Actually, it's a nice question for me. We love to make lemon juice. Okay. Should you add ice before or after dissolving sugar? In which case would it be possible to dissolve more sugar? Okay, this is basically on the concept of saturation. So basically, when you heat, okay, when you heat the solution, okay, when you heat the solution, you'll be able to, add more and more and more sugar or salt. Okay, so that's the concept here. So ice generally reduces the heat, reduces the temperature. Okay, so it's basically advisable to add it after dissolving sugar. Then only you'll be able to dissolve more sugar because after adding ice, cool down. So when the solution is cool, when the solution is cold, it's generally tough to dissolve sugar or salt. So generally you have to add when it's hot. That is, before adding ice itself, you have to put sugar and dissolve it. Okay, yeah. So with this chapter is over. Okay. So this is just a chapter of class 6 for you. So, yeah. So let me know if you need any other chapters as well. I'll be happy to do them, right? So I'll be happy to take any other chapters for you as well. So many people don't make much videos for the class 6 and 8 people. So that's why I thought I'll make some chemistry videos for you. Okay. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the session. Any feedback, any suggestions, anything are welcome. You may put them down in the comments. So yeah, till I see you in the next video, stay subscribed. Okay. See you later then. Bye.